world. I used to be felt soft, or in a sort, Ridley knew who or what I was, and thereby the music, and therefore lost, I was. Consulted with myself about it, and was ready. Loving friends and kindred, when I look back, so short in charity and good works, we are a small remnant of signal escapes, wonderful in themselves. We march from our camp a little and come home, lost the beaten track, and so river section dark all this time. We must not worry how few we are and fall from each other, more than language can express. Hope for the artist in America and etc. This is my birthday. These are the old home trees. All that is and all that is. Listen, listen, map all that sea. Are you looking at sea? Goading ice wind, arrowly, am I to fear the waves, or his memory, cradle, cradle? Whippoorwill, you song so native to my own freely. There were rushlights, spermaceti candles, sweetness of scent. How much older just visible to this age and the next age under homespin indigo strapwork, as if dome light blue foliage were distant colony. Even chairs drift, outswept arm, otherwise plain. Night draws the planet tremulous. Tinsel hope, I intersect linen, silk. Hermit thrush, sparrow, 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 sparrow. Starling, swallow, swallow, swallow. Bay-leaved, Bedford, one. Crack, creeping, cricket bat. Dark-leaved, dwarf, French, golden, Lapland. Net-leaved, saddlers, tea-leaved, tree, small. Weeping, white, whortle-leaf, woolly. Willows, withy. Lost notebooks. Echo, echo, I love you. Breathe, breathe. Frederick Law Olmsted, of Central Park fame, was born in 1822 in Hartford, Connecticut. And he was born around the same time of Herman Melville. If that's of interest, it is to me. What there isn't, quote, my mother died while I was so young that I have but a tradition of memory rather than the faintest recollection of her. While I was a small schoolboy, if I was asked if I remembered her, I could say, yes, I remember playing on the grass and looking up at her while she sat sewing under a tree. I now only remember that I did so remember her. But it has always been a delight to see a woman sitting under a tree, sewing and minding a child, unquote. Soon after Charlotte Olmsted's death from an overdose of laudanum in 1826, her firstborn 6-year-old son was sent away to various locations around the Connecticut countryside. Quote, the surface of the country was rugged, the soil, except in small patches, poor, the farms consequently large, and the settlements scattered, unquote. Usually he boarded with minister guardians who tutored him or sent him to local schools in whatever parish they served. His first, quote, thoroughly rural parish, unquote, was in Guilford, where I now live. But in 2023, it's a suburb. It seemed to him then he could wander where he wished and do what he liked. Once a man came by to say that a sick child had died. In those days, farm work was stopped and district schools closed so that children might walk in funeral processions. As he was boarding at the parsonage, he helped fetch the bier and pall from the little stone house in the graveyard. That evening, he overheard the minister and other mourners comforting her parents. Later, he stole out alone to the burying ground and, kneeling beside the new grave, asked God to wake her up so he could lead her home to her mother. My attention was probably called off by a whippoorwill and by nighthawks and fireflies, for these are associated in my mind with the locality. I seldom hear the swoop of a nighthawk without thinking of it. I went back to the house and was sent to bed, no one asking where I had been. Almost 50 years later, Olmsted composed his brief autobiographical fragment as a remedy for insomnia. In relation to detail, every first scrap of memory survives in sleep or insanity. Pintail. Warbler, 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 glaucous gull. From depths, periscope. Closed book, who stole who away? Do brackets signify emptiness? Was it a rift in experience? Mackerel and porpoise, was this the last of us? These tallied scraps float like glass skiffs quietly for love or pity and all that. What an idea in such a time as ours, Pip among Pleiades. Mystical accidentalism for sound hemmed naught in Knight's botanical glossary. Over unnamed cycles, see the rich on that rust heap. In the old days, I used to sit up late till an owl appeared. Negative infinity melodrama. I shall never forget you, halfway owl, shadow marauder, how you flew over and over. A day without yesterday, mackerel sky over Boston. Sea tossing waves at ice font doorstep, non-fiction prose poem, my icicle hair. This side, I will show miniature network entanglements, comma, blessings, full stop, yours very, half hesitation, semicolon, semicolon. Yes, the sea lies about us, our tininess on earth as such. These quiet stars, each free intelligence sealed from us. Days and hours are blinds. These screens, these means. Each new extreme outvies each quickening after. After the millennium, a little before, at the brink, humming octaves with wild trills of magic and symbolic logic, a not being in the know.
Wow. Thank you so much, Susan. That was really so special. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to Ann, whose brilliant exhibition we have the honor of being, in the presence of for its final weekend. And Ann, let's just maybe start by saying, do you have thoughts about Susan's brilliant reading that you want to respond to? Just
No.
to kick us to kick it off. I mean,
no.
Oh, no.
I'm in awe. I'm shaking right now. It's really an incredible piece that you made just now. This was special for today. A lot has to do, everything with Susan's work and thoughts are from before, but today she pieced together something that she thought I might like, or that the paintings might like.
Yeah, I think that the paintings would like.
And so I heard visitations.
Yeah.
I heard whippoorwill. Mm-hmm. I heard night. I heard everything we've talked about with the love of Frederick Law Olmsted.
Yeah.
And I mean,
that's for her.
It's for me.
She mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, he walked the same areas in Guilford where we both live. Susan lives there all the time, and I've only lived there part-time, but a lot of the paintings that I've painted of the moon, mostly setting, because the moon sets over the sound, and I was in Joshua Cove, and I just imagined Frederick Law Olmsted walking the same areas that we walked and looked at the same moon, although the moon's different all the time, seemingly the same, but always different. And I imagined Susan walking the same grounds and thinking about the same thing, the moon, the sky, the mackerel sky of Boston. Was it the salmon sky or the mackerel sky? And the glorious sky in Guilford. So I've always wanted to figure out where he was in Guilford, and this is the closest I'm ever going to get, because it's right here. It's in her brilliance of her thoughts about nature and about life in general, and reflection, revisitation, as well as visitation, what you had mentioned. And the collages are just exquisite. I just wish we could just hear those. I mean, I want to hear what you say too.
No, I'm asking questions.
I have to say, in Guilford, when you walk around Guilford, you think of Central Park. It really, it's as though he took the quarry stones and the little bays. I don't know, it's in Central Park. Yeah. The spirit is in Central Park. It's really strange. And you should come to Guilford sometime. Nobody ever does.
Well, when you hear the stories about where he lived in Guilford, it was about the marshes, because he really cared about the water and the marshes, which is one of the reasons why he chose Guilford. But he also saved the Back Bay of Boston from certain, crazy water problems by creating the Fenway, saving the Fenway, the water. So by living in Guilford, I swear he saved a lot of people. The Emerald Necklace in Boston, all those waterways that that join each other. But anyway, I'm always obsessed with the idea that he looked at the same moon I looked at, the same moon that Susan looked at in Guilford.
And I think, I mean, to start off on a discussion of your paintings and of this brilliant exhibition and the exhibition that we were so lucky to have with you down in Savannah at the SCAD Museum of Art that we have this book now as a tangible legacy of, your work is inherently tied to where you are, and the moon, and especially the landscape. The moons, the trees are, characters. The moon is the moon as you see it, with the light effects and of the, the atmosphere of whether, Guilford, White Street, Maine, Cushing. I'd love if you could kind of speak a little bit to the places that and the histories of how you kind of came to paint the moon and how you feel that they reflect the place. I mean, this beech tree, this moon with this, incredible beech tree on your, at your home.
You climbed
in
that
Maine.
tree.
I climbed the tree. Yeah. Give me a good tree like that, I'll climb it.
If you look at that painting, if you make an inch on your finger and you put your finger at the bottom of the trunk, that's how big you are under that tree.
It's a gigantic tree.
Bigger than this room.
But I guess what I'd love for you to share a little bit is how the moon and the memories, the aspect of memory, and in the Olmsted vignette, I thought that was a beautiful word there. How the moon is memory that's related to location and site, but also to a kind of universalism related to like what you were just saying about the same moon that Olmsted looks at and that Susan looks at, and we all look at.
But also, I think of Olmsted as a little child being thrown out of his house at, the father's marrying again and staying in Hartford. And here he's to a minister's house in Guilford in like 1830, which would have been a very desolate place. And why I look at the birds there, and I think, oh, that's his mother, or oh, there's something that's a spirit of a child, and a kind of holiness, that a holy gentleness that, and the deer, and then the washes. I love the washes in that, like water over the moon or something. I mean, anyway, that's it seems there. It's very moving. You get a kind of haunted, but natural beauty into these and particular ones.
And that piece from the Midnight, Susan's book that she just recited from, with Olmsted in that area, it was a piece, I think, about your mother as well, and about the memory, the echo, again, the revisitation in your mind's eye of a loved one, of someone who's passed, who's no longer walking this earth yet is now a spirit or whatever it is that you do when you go. But I think the idea for me, and what I hold so close with your work, is the revisitation of things that you don't necessarily give means to until you really get it, until someone reads it and understands it. It's really a self-portrait about loss in some ways and about life. And my work, a lot of times I will revisit. I'll revisit an image again and again and again. And the moon itself was a means for me to be able to, have something that I call my own subject matter, although I wanted it to be universally everybody's, because my mother looked at the moon, my father looked at the moon, Susan, Daniel, everybody looks at the moon. It's not just mine, but what it represented for me was a seemingly reappearance of the same thing. And so I made it my subject matter 30 years ago, and I got a lot of crap for it. But now everybody seems to be doing it. I was called the lunatic by my uncle. I mean, but at the same time, I didn't shy away from it, but I didn't hide in it. Like I do paint portraits, as nobody knows that, but I've been painting similar idea to the moon. As one long diary, I paint people who come to visit me, but I don't show those. I only show the moons. But the idea of time and place and where I'm at is sort of a recording of my diary of where I've been, where I've walked, where I've been. And so when I date the paintings as title, that's another, sort of secret way into having a diary of where I've been. And so
to that end, can you share a little bit about the process of how you paint the moons? I mean, we've talked a lot about, having the 12 moons, one for each month, showing the small scale 14 by 14 inch moons, and then seeing the process through which you translate or expand upon them, maybe is a better way to put it, and how that relates to your work is almost like a conceptual art practice too. I think we've talked about Ankawara as a reference for your practice, which I don't think a lot of people, when they just look at your work as like great painting, is something that immediately comes to mind unless they know that part of your practice.
Well, I never wanted the conceptual side of my work to get in the way of the making of an image of something that I cared about, because a deer isn't necessarily a smart. It's from the heart. It's something I saw as a child, but that reoccurred when I saw the film Soylent Green, the film within the film where Edward G. Robinson goes home to die in Central Park. And you're given a potion, and you actually see on the screen, the film within this film, nature that doesn't belong, is no longer around because mankind killed nature. And so my deer is it represents life instead of death. And it also has a conversation with Gustave Courbet's The Death of the Stag. So when you see one of my deer paintings, it's the life of the fawn. And it's an ongoing, discussion about repeating, and a film repeats itself. The film within the film of Soylent Green repeated itself. Everybody who went to die in Central Park, because the earth was overrun. New York had 100 people in a teeny studio apartment. You'd go to die at this place called home, and every single person that went there to die drank a potion and was lulled to their beautiful death with a film of nature. And so there lies a lot of, I saw that as a kid, like about 8 years old, 9 years old. But, at the same time, I'm painting these for my mother. I don't want them to be smart, or I don't need them to be conceptually, have a depth that goes far beyond what you're looking at. I want people to be able to enjoy them for what they are. For my, my mother used to get so excited that I could paint. I was given an oil painting set when I was 6 years old, and I was allowed to paint in my house with turpentine because I grew up with a roofing family in Boston, and they weren't afraid of solvents. And my mother actually loved the smell of turpentine. And so, when you know how to use when your process is, since you're 6 years old, you know how to use oil paints. When you get to college, you have to think about something else. But I said to my mom, I'm going to be an architect. And she said, oh, no, you have to be a painter. And she knew nothing about that, because I'm the first one to go to school in my family, but she just loved that I could paint and draw, and she enjoyed it. So for that reason, I felt strong. I enjoyed it because my mother, she wasn't afraid to love something that she had no idea. She just saw her daughter as a talent, have talent, or magic. I think she saw it more as magic.
Magic and moonlight.
Magic and moonlight, yeah.
Is that a part of your you're sort of...
Those are my dog's names, by the way.
Is that a part of the reason why you select your subject matter then, you know, to have this kind of accessibility, but also this sort of universality, and again, there's a sort of a repetition aspect to this?
Well, that's a great question, and you know, I think because I repeat images, I revisit images, I revisit paintings, I revisit the moon, I revisit flowers on a stool in front of the moon. I do that forever. You know, I revisit, this is a painting that is a collage in itself. It's a, you know, it's my love of George O'Keeffe and the blue bunting that's from my grandmother's ornithological book that I found after she died. And we were never allowed to have birds in the house because she was from Italian descent. And the Italian descent, for some reason, had a bad omen associated with birds. So, yeah.
Would you speak about the eye in that bird painting?
Yes.
That particular painting, because that is sort of like throwing off omens to me. It's real. So everybody should take a special look at the eye of the bird that you just added.
Yeah, what do you want to say about that one?
Well, you tell me about it.
So before you got here, I painted a little bit.
She did.
I finished my
literally
painting before you got here. Yeah, there were two eyes on that bird earlier today. And I realized a few weeks ago, while painting that painting, I had put two eyes on that bird because I needed to have eyes in the back of my head, eyes on the side of my head, as well as the eyes that were given, God-given eyes in the front of our heads. And I wanted to, and there was one, there is one in the back still, but you can't see it. But the thing is I realized I don't want to see any longer. I don't need to see out of the side of my head or the back of my head. I don't need to see the past. I'm only looking forward. And so I painted that eye out, the second eye out, and there's only one eye because I feel that right now, forward thinking, forward looking, you know, that's why we're given eyes in the front of our head, or we would have been given, you know, some people are lucky to have eyes in the back of their head, but I mean, so really it was meant to be to just live the way it did for 6 weeks, and now it's with just one singular eye. Forward thinking.
It is singular.
Singular.
I mean, it's really good.
There is a component of optics, you know, in your work. I think in terms of, I mean, the kind of crazy eights, sort of showing the atmosphere of, you know, around the moon is it's how you see it. But more than that, it's how you're experiencing it.
Optics.
I think. Yeah, I mean.
Wow. Yeah, what is optics again? Optics
looking,
is
you know, the sort of seeing how things are seen in that sense. But I guess what I'm getting at with this is there's also subtle tricks or subtle magic that is in the work related to seeing in terms of the lusciousness of paint and what you were describing before about your mother just being so impressed, I think is a word that I read into that, about your ability to depict reality, but also in a way that's just so much more than the kind of naturalism of how things appear. It's also how they feel as well. Do you see that as a part of your objective when you're creating a painting, and how kind of luscious everything is in terms of the application of paint?
Yeah, she used to embarrass me too, and you know, because she was so proud that I could paint something or somebody, or paint a leaf, or paint a, you know, even from a book, an illustration, and so that idea of painting from observation was always something that I wasn't afraid of, but at the same time, I always thought I wanted to be an abstract painter for the mere reason that I could paint in the round, or that I was depicting something that was optical, or that was seen in this world. I didn't want to label it though, so you have to think about what are you going to paint when when you're trying to figure out subject matter, you need to, as a kid, you know, when you're teaching as well, like what do you want to paint? And so my work thinks about things from very early childhood, and it doesn't, and I'm scared of that, you know, that it's foolish, or that it's kind of not worthy of a painting, but at the same time, or that's what we should be doing, is doing things that you really care about. And if it is foolish, so what, you know? So a collaging of a bird and another painter's vision. I mean, how dare I do that? But I felt it was something that would look good, you know. It was, and then it kind of dumbed it down at the same time. It wasn't about being smart. It was about how I remember, kind of in the back of my mind, memories of things. I remember something similar to this as a child, but I can't scratch the itch. And so the deer is probably the easiest of subject matters to justify. Kids love deers, and you know they're annoying to some people, but to others they're breathtaking. And if you see it,
No, I mean, not to interrupt, but I think there are things that are extremely complex that are going on in the work too, related to foreground, background. I mean, you know, in the show we did in Savannah, which was moons from 2023, you also had, 2022. You had, you know, these flowers. You had smaller scale works that were flowers, and the moons. At one point, you said, yeah, well, those are moon paintings that are behind. It's not like the flowers are at night. It's the physical painting that is a backdrop for the flowers. And like you've been alluding to, you know, that there are actual Georgia O'Keeffe paintings, which are the backgrounds for some of these birds. You're playing with things that are very complex in that way, and there's times where it's almost deceptively simple of, look at this beautiful bird that, you know, but even in that, like, there are characters, you know, of recurring characters of birds and references from the ornithology books and whatnot. So, you know,
they're one long collage.
Yeah, collage is a good word.
And my hat's off to Susan because of her collage poems, and we did a piece together in a book we made with the church in Maine,
Reggie,
and we talked on Zoom, and she put together some of her most incredible choristers. Is that how we say it?
Chorister. That was chorister. You see, because that's a famous, the last poem Stevens wrote, not reality, but the thing itself. And he, at the last ending of winter, March, he hears a bird cry. And at the first ending of light, and the beginning of light, last ending of winter, a bird's cry, a chorister whose sea preceded the choir. And I think that's one of the most brilliant things I ever, a chorister whose sea preceded the choir. The two seas and the chorister, I don't know, it's one of the most beautiful, and it's the end, it's the last poem in the collected. Oh, anyway.
Well, and Ann, what you're doing is related in terms of, like you say, collage or montage, and in terms of natural imagery, like the birds, like the sea, like the trees and the moon. I mean,
yes,
please,
and what you had mentioned is, a lot
church,
of times
that was
the urge.
No, but I mean, it was for the church. The sea preceded the choir. It was a church. Your show was in a redone church.
And a church in Maine on the sea.
And there's now a silent choir in the church. There was so many choirs. It was the echo of the memory of the sound of the whippoorwill, or the sound of the bird before the choir even. So you took it further before that was maybe even built.
Right.
I mean,
anyway.
So for me, collaging is always it's something that is I'm sort of eating myself at the same time, because I'll plunk a a vase of flowers on a stool. A lot of times it's Josh's stools.
And a personal, the vase is also a personal
vase of my mother's.
Yeah.
It's or it was my grandmother's, a crystal vase. And that painting, what's behind it is a painting of mine. So I plunked those roses, those are dahlias, in front of a painting that was leaning in my studio in Maine that I had just painted a week before of the bright orange, yellow, pink, whatever the color it was, rising over the St. George's River. So it's a collage, really. It's plein air at the same time. It's using my own subject matter to make sense of what you do with foreground, background, and what precedes each other, what comes before, what comes after, and the moon coming. The painting of the purple beech tree with the moon coming through the tree. I exaggerated that, but it was really that bright and that powerful that it was burning a hole through the moon, through that purple beech tree to me, and I could feel its strength, the moon rising and the water on the light on the water. But that has a little bit of yellow, that moon, and the water, the color of the water is just titanium white.
And that's why I was sort of asking that about representing, the experience of a night and of the moon, rather than a kind of more, a colder, kind of more removed, kind of more scientific depiction of these things. I think you especially, I knew the moon in New England, but I didn't know the moon specifically of Cushing, and of your part of Cushing, or of Guilford, until being in those places and seeing the moon like that. And I think that's something that you're toggling between universal and the local in that way, right?
The Northeast corridor, really.
Yeah.
And Guilford was Boston a few times. I painted the moon in Boston, and then in Maine and New York.
Yeah.
So.
The seasons and
and again back to where I'm painting and where I'm at, but the idea of time is very important for me as well, because it has its time. It's the time that it's painted, then it's done. I don't go back, but it's a recording of where I was.
Well, absolutely, and that's why we sort of started in terms of talking about.
Our show is one long recording of 2022.
Exactly, of the moons from January to end of December, and of a very particular moment, and in the way that cycle of cycles just has existed and will continue to exist throughout your practice. But then there's this last or additional component that is really beautifully represented in this show as well, of the scale as well. You have the smaller scale works and then the larger, more monumental works. I'd love if you could share a little bit about scale and how you sort of select and expand and grow, in that aspect of your work.
Well, I was always told, you're not supposed to show the small ones with the big ones at the same time. It takes away from something. But I can't. I needed selfishly to see the smaller paintings with the larger paintings, so that it could actually, it's the time in between that it's just a very small walk into the other room. So the time in between seeing this painting or that painting in its smaller version, there's a time element. And so that time in between is very important for me in my painting practice, because a while ago too, I don't even want to bring it up, but I had a fire, and everybody's had horrible things happen to them, so please don't, I'm not pitying myself. I'm just saying that losing so much of your work, I wanted to recreate as much as I could from memory, but then I realized can't really do it from memory. I just have to, use the images of the paintings that I have still. Some I still don't have, but and that time in between is it's important. The time in between someone's death and your own death. You know, what do you do in that time period? You know, so the thought of that never leaves somebody's head of a loved one. So in a way, the smaller ones are taking care of the larger ones, and just asking you to look a little bit and to see maybe about my process, if it's at all interesting, and if not, it's okay. You can just look at it as a bird or a moon or a deer, or the infinity clouds that are. I painted those last year, and I call them Crazy Eights. I think Brendan named them Crazy Eights, and I just went with it. And so there's a lot of, nighttime is a magical time, and I don't know, there's everything flying around. There was the aurora borealis that I felt was making the clouds give me that infinity feel, but I exaggerated them. But I also imagined, fairies flying around and, spirit in or not. I mean, what do I know?
No, so much.
Don't believe anything.
How are you feeling? Do you want to chat more about the paintings, or should we hear the last bits from Susan?
What time is it?
It's just about 3, just 5 minutes or so to 3, or to 4.
4?
Excuse me. Is there anything else you want to add in terms of your process, or in terms of, the experience of, of us as audience in front of these works in the show and in others? Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, in the end, it's, a lot of it is about the moment just passed as well.
Yeah.
So the moon, when we look up at the moon, it changes so rapidly that you want to catch it. And so for me, one of my favorite things within the work is the moment just passed. And so if I'm painting a series, Susan's series are, to me, is so important for the reality and the non-reality of it. And in a way, mine too, I'd like to think of. But the moons, the small 14 by 14 inch moons, which I don't have in the show, are the continuous moment just passed.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Oh.
Susan.
Okay, this is this second bookend. Most of my writing life has been spent in Connecticut, not far from where Hannah Edwards Wetmore, 1717 through 1733, lived and wrote. Reading her private writings, I experience through an occult invocation of verbal links and forces the qualities peculiar to our seasonal changing light and color. It's a second kind of knowledge, tender, tangled, violent, august, and infinitely various. I remember the summer before my sister Terusha's death making, and I was leaning over the south fence and thinking in this manner, that I was never likely to do better, and where should I go, etc. Early November evening with frost forecast. The sight of a bare bough caught by streetlight outside my window. Electric, false beauty, and confined beauty. Relict. The closer I look, the farther away your interlaced co-conscious pattern. Names shelter us under the wings of first creation. Hannah's first name begins and ends with the aspirate phoneme H, spectral letter H, occult, quick thought, reached through the fire of art. To reach is to touch. The as yet moon rent hang poised, rift and air, nor had rule at the far reaches of land and at or swim nald, flew of things, oh, odds for fl de gl fl. Here on a clear night in February, I can see so many stars. Before coming in, I stop between the car and the house, and fixing my gaze on one in particular, I recite the same wish. Starlight, star bright, first star I see tonight. I wish Becky, Mark, David, Peter, and I won't die until we are very old. Very old, I whisper to myself, and the celestial constellations, as if I were still very young. I retain the original order, even though David died in 1992 and Peter in 2008. I never do this indoors, because looking at a new moon through glass was and is terribly unlucky, according to my mother's divinations, so I can't take a chance of accidental sightings. If this is obsessive compulsive behavior, so what? Meaning through measure may be transmitted from one generational folklore reality through another. If a line is quick and strong, it pierces our glassy earth. It bursts out of reflection on all sides because the heart refuses to be imprisoned. In its first and narrowest pulses, it already tends outward with a vast force. Come in. Sit distantly close to me, snow image. Let's form crosses in the air while reading and sleeping according to reciprocal reflection. This broken mirror is the world magnified. 7 years bad luck, unless you quickly toss its glassy splinters in the river. And this ending part is from my last book, Concordance. Names stand out in single isolation, not for what they say, or for what seems to remain unsaid, stepping out as much as you like. Each slight verbal reference or connection gets lost, though found, by some inherent sense of form, in every respect but touch, linking the always undiscovered country to all families on earth. There is no other way Eve, the unknowable author of life, will live to teach others, bruising the serpent's head from years of treading water under history. Ideas are her undercover. Only shells remain as placeholder, keeping her spiral self safe somewhere far off. She lays siege to your heart in spirit of the occult, as the setting into the work as truth made to blend others, so that wrath is not the last thing. Knowing birth is identical with death, and even mercy seasonable in days of affliction. This has something to do with ecology, with what lies buried on the ocean floor. Shields and sails and ships cast down eons before house and home, even before time, as the roofed gateway in which a bier is placed, before again disappearing. Late last night, when I couldn't sleep, I wondered at how the cold reversal of moonlight on snow from outside brightens the commonplace stillness of the house, and how quietly night stands open to us and sits up for us. not fastening the door. In January 1538, a woman at Walsingham was carted about the marketplace in deep snow and set in stocks for saying a despoiled shrine had begun to work miracles mingled into the soul of this world, a strong sun lording the sky. So let us all be as we are, under our own roofs. Fishmonger, on the beach margin, after long pilgrimage, waving to the quiet moon. There you go.
Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you, Anne. Shall we take some questions from the audience?
If you'd like.
Gladly. And then we can continue informally. Maybe we take one or two, and then we can continue informally with the book and the preview of the book and the book signing as well. Does anybody have any burning questions they want to ask Anne? Yeah, sure, in the back.
I know you mentioned you revised this painting, but what's your typical process of deciding when the painting is complete?
So the question is, when do you know when it's finished?
Yes.
That's always such a good question. You know, a lot of times it's not finished.
Today.
And then it's too late to finish it. So you get used to it, you hate it, and then you end up liking it a lot more because you stopped sooner than you would have,
That's beautiful.
ruining it.
Great.
But with oils, you have a little time to finish a painting. For me, anyway, I've never used anything else. The only acrylic I use is for these books I make for Karma, the special editions. But I only work with oil. So oil is so forgiving. It's like words. You can move it around forever. Not forever, for only like a day. Because it'll set up, and once it gets sticky, you know, for me anyway, I don't like it that way. Some painters love to layer that way. When I'm talking about layering or collaging, it's the pre-idea. It's the idea, not the physical process.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi.
Beautiful show, amazing work, and I'm in awe of your approach to the moonlight and how major it is. I always felt like taking a picture on my iPhone when like the full moon is in effect. It's just like this pinhole, and to get that kind of just beaming glow in a painting is it's an ambitious subject matter, you know, and it's just so larger than life. And I was curious, as a painter, you were saying that you went more with the moon beaming through the tree, and then you decided to go just titanium white on the reflections of the water. Where did you come up with that? Because, you know, in an environment, like bouncing light everywhere, but the warmth. I was just curious why you decided to do that.
You can see the difference in the yellow on the moon and the white on the doves. You can see how different how warmer and it's punchier. And the part that there's like this time in between the moon shining at you through the tree and its reflection on the water. So the water's reflection for me, visually, took the color out of it. So I saw it at some point, and then I remembered it while I was painting the larger version, because the smaller version is just the white. So I put that in there yellow. I added the yellow because I needed it to be really present, and not like a sun, but like the sun. It's like the sun and the moon are, it's just different times of day. I don't paint the sun, but so in a way it had, I wanted color to be the content.
Beautiful.
Hi. Hi.
Do you start with the composition basically intact, resolved, and then the painting becomes a fleshing out and a riffing on what is already a kind of a composition that you're going in with? Or do you, figure out the composition as you go?
It's figured out on a small scale all the time, but the size is something that I've never stopped using. So 14 by 14 inch moon paintings are a sort of, it's something that I know well. I know the brushes that I'll use. It's it's the time it will take me to maybe paint 1 or 2 or 3 in one night, because they're sort of they're in sync with each other, or the song. It's like one brushstroke ends the next, and then they're dated and timed that night, with maybe even minutes in between sometimes. So that dictates what's the next size. So everything happens kind of magically, improvisationally, but with a lot of rules for me, but there's no rules except for the size. So the size has always given me the courage to do whatever I wanted within that size. So it's not too much different than on Kawara. I mean, I think he's a genius. Everybody does. I mean, I can't compare myself to him, but I can look and say that that's an inspiration there that I really cared about. And then in between a small painting and a large painting, there's so much that can happen. The bigger brushstrokes, the mess of, something that might be much more exciting than the smaller ones. But the small ones might be just always what they are, which is me inside the night sky painting the moon wherever I am, but you always will know because of the date and the time. So it's so selfish.
I think you should all sit on this chair and look at this painting in relation to the small one.
You can see it. Yes.
Because it's just incredibly magical. And to me, the small painting is just like shimmering out. So to me, small is immensely powerful.
Totally.
And it really is doing the way it was hung in this show, the two of them.
And you can only see it in a certain place. And if you're
it's just amazing. And so did you do that first? And then that's the first?
Yes, that's the first. And even a smaller version was the first. But this is in, it's a rectangle. It's not a square.
Yeah.
So this rectangle became that rectangle.
Yeah.
And it's a little wider, so I had to improvise and make it a little shorter. So there were decisions that are very mechanical that a roofer could make, I come from a roofing family, and,
Did you know did you notice me sticking roof in?
I heard roof. I heard roof right before moon.
I know. Couldn't believe it. It was a coincidence.
I
Total
almost
coincidence. I
fainted.
did not know her father was a roofer. I did not know that.
Maybe let's.
And the repeated system. Well, it was my grandfather, and he back then in Boston. You carried everything up on the roof. You carried the shingles up on but putting the shingles on is this repetitive movement, and you take this nail out, boom, you take the nail out, boom. I was working alongside of them, helping them or giving them water, I don't know, but they gave me little jobs as a kid. So I remember the visual of their repetition, and I think that kind of cursed me.
I know.
Well, maybe let's
Great.
take.
Didn't know it was a gift.
It was a
Yeah.
gift.
But
And
maybe-
my grandfather always said something else. And I was reminded of this recently by one of our plumber who's, you know, a friend of a friend. His name is Jay Holmes, and the name of his company is called Tanks a Lot. Because he takes out tanks, he takes out oil tanks in Boston. And but he just reminded me that my grandfather, he said, "What did your grandfather always say to you?" I said, "I don't remember. I kind of remember." He said, "Think." And I said, "Oh." He said, "Keep it going." Keep it going. And he'd walk around the corner.
Yeah. Well, maybe in terms of keeping it going, let's take one last question, and then we can talk about people can see the book and get you to sign the book and whatnot. I think there was one more here in the front, if that works for you.
I just really loved the chapters, book ending, your rhythm and your words and the atmosphere had a beautiful space for all of us. Thank you. How did you, or when did you first meet the two of you? And then a secondary question is, if you could just speak a little bit more about the background of the dove painting and what's happening compositionally. Because I've just started taking care of doves, and doves are exactly like that, perfectly portrayed doves.
We met at Rebecca's house.
Years ago.
Years ago.
Yeah. But we'd seldom talk. So it was like a telepathic communication.
I fell in love with her the minute I met her.
No, but I mean, I fell in love with her too. No, you didn't. You couldn't. If you only knew. You knew
But
the
it
real
was
story.
Susan Howe I was meeting, and I, you know, by knowing her work, what I knew, I was blown away that she was this person. She was like us, you know, and there she was at her daughter's house, and which isn't just a house, it's a Tony Smith house. I mean, it's this incredible piece of artwork, and there she is sitting outside. Oh, hi. Hi. And I just needed to know her more. I was completely obsessed. And when we've just, you know, kept in touch.
But you were very gutsy. Asking me to do a poem. I mean, really, seriously, my work is eccentric, shall we say. No, I mean, it really,
gosh,
that was very, I was flattered, I was amazed, and honored.
Well, and check out the book, Moons and Angels. It's a book that was of the paintings that were in the church in 2021, my paintings and Reggie Burroughs Hodges' paintings. And we asked Susan to please collaborate with us. They're visually beautiful pieces in themselves, as well as verbally. I mean, hearing you recite them here today was I'm incredibly powerful. And thank you forever.
Well,
Yes,
thank
thank
you
you.
for asking me. It was a great experience. And such a connection in this beautiful space. It's just a beautiful, beautiful space.
Great. Well,
And
For her work.
the doves
Yeah, speak to
are pulled from Patti Smith's painting Wave. And it's the one that her and Robert Mapplethorpe was actually taking the photo of. And I met Patti in Paris, and I told her, because I painted this similar painting 14 years ago. I revisited it for this show. And about 10 years ago, I met Patti, and I said, I pulled the doves into some of my work. I can't believe how beautiful those doves are. How did that happen? And she said, that was a crazy, horrible day. Those doves were really not happy. I felt bad that they were in my apartment, and the guy that brought them wasn't very nice, or, you know, but in the end, the doves ended up calming down, and we got a great photo out of it, and it was peaceful. So it was a peaceful experience for her, although it was hard to not know birds, she said. And so for me, the title is Night Wave. So the background is a painting of Georgia O'Keeffe's that I've turned upside down. So I used Georgia's work as my background for that painting.
Well, thank you so much, Ann. This has been so lovely. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Karma. This is really very cool.
Thank you, Daniel.
Oh, thank you.